Dr. Eric Topol, introducing him could take some time, but he's a cardiologist. He's the director and founder of something called the Scripps Research Translational Institute, which, if I get it right, Eric, translational medicine and translational sciences is kind of the bringing together of different research and clinical. Wait, you just define it. What is translational? What does it mean?
Well, it's taking basic science and changing medicine, basically.
Good. And well, let me just quickly mention your last two books, because I think they both enter into the translational piece. His most recent book from 2019 is Deep Medicine: How AI Can Make Healthcare Human Again. And I want to ask you what you meant by that to explain it. And the previous book a couple years earlier was The Patient Will See You Now. The Future of Medicine is in Your Hands. Now, as I understand it, the two of the big goals of your institute are to emphasize AI in healthcare and also individualized medicine. So in effect, your last two books are about two facets of your work. Is that the way you look at it?
Absolutely. You nailed it, David. Not surprisingly, of course.
Well, of course, Eric, you've got so much to say about so many things, but you're here especially because you've been really outspoken on the pandemic. What have we learned so far in this crazy, disturbing crisis emergency period we're just hopefully now coming out of?
Well, with you starting about this translational science, perhaps the greatest thing we've learned is how the science community can rally and come up with an incredibly effective vaccines, which are going to get us out of this mess that we're in. And in record time. The average time it takes for a successful vaccine is 8.5 years. And there are many pathogens we've never had a vaccine that works. So to do that and to get the trials done in a matter of months and then get rolling them out, where pretty soon we're going to have 1 billion doses out there, which is, pretty amazing, actually. Really? So, all this is happening so fast, and that's a good precedent for the future because, the problem we've had, David, is that over the years, all this great stuff sits in the research orbit compartment and never gets to help people. So this is a really fantastic example of a positive thing that's come out of the biomedical world.
Was the speed with which that happened purely a function of the urgency and government pressure that was put to bear, or was there something happening in science anyway that made it a little easier?
Yeah, well, there was a warm-up, like 30 years worth, for the mRNA as a platform, which has turned out to be an ideal one for safety and efficacy standpoint. But there was the so-called Operation Warp Speed really did help in terms of many of the manufacturers of vaccines, except for Pfizer, were part of that. So a smaller company like Moderna getting, a very big investment where it really couldn't fail. And obviously Pfizer went on their own, but still, the fact that we got things so fast was having this big push. It came from both the life science industry as well as government. And it wasn't just, of course, in the US. So, it was a combination of factors for sure.
So what's your diagnosis of where we are?
Well,
as a doctor?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your place. I mean, if you're in the US right now, we may, I emphasize, have finally built a wall with the vaccines. That is, we're starting to see even Michigan, which has been an outlier, starting to look better. And some of the states that we're starting to see a slope of ascent in cases are starting to show that that's not going to be a big surge. So if that continues, and if we now keep the vaccination momentum going, we're going to be getting over the hump. And in the summer, late June, July, we should be in really good shape. Now, obviously, it's not the end of the pandemic because we've got things raging in India, Brazil, and other parts of the world. And there's a potential when you don't have containment of the virus anywhere that we could see new variants that are potentially worse than what we have right now. So I think we're going to be looking good in the summer, and then hopefully that'll stick. That's really the question. But if you're in other parts of the world right now, it isn't as favorable.
So the U.S. has done an unusually good job of getting the vaccines out. Is that what that's testimony to?
Yeah, I think almost everything that has been done has been solid in terms of getting, over 200 million doses, 220 million doses out there. I wish there'd been a little more plasticity, David. That is, when Michigan was lighting up, that was the time to go do a blitz of vaccines, first doses, and try to put the fire out before it got raging. Also, we know that people who've had COVID, and there are a lot of those people, they don't really need two shots. One is more than enough. So,
Really?
yeah, I mean, they need one, but the idea that they need two has really been, very strong evidence that one is enough. So, things like that, where, we could get much better use of the vaccines that we do have quickly. The idea that, just going with a one dose for a stretch of time until we get on top of this UK variant, the B117, which has been now the dominant challenge for us. But, we basically had this mantra in the US that we're going to just go for the two doses in everybody. And, and also the last thing, I guess, was a concern about J&J. That vaccine is certainly very reasonable, and to put it on a long pause, like more than a day, is unfortunate. But those are minor issues. Overall, to emphasize, it's been an excellent, aggressive campaign.
Well, you said something positive about Operation Warp Speed, which was, of course, a Trump administration program. There's clearly been a major change in our approach under the new administration, under President Biden. But how much credit do you give the Trump administration for where we are?
Well, it's mixed, because, the idea of Operation Warp Speed didn't come from the administration. It actually came from the FDA. And so Peter Marks, he's a big Star Trek-y guy, and he wanted to see if we could really rev things up. So he had a brilliant idea. Now, what was good about the administration is they put money behind it. But you have to say that Pfizer rolled on their own. They didn't want to be part of it. So it wasn't only Operation Warp Speed. There was one of the largest pharma companies in the world said, look, we don't want to be under that umbrella. We want to have free range and be a free agent. And that's why they basically won the race to get out there first, because they weren't encumbered by the warp speed. So there's good and bad, but surely they deserve credit. The investment in many other companies helped to catalyze the vaccine readiness.
Well, there's a big article, I think it's in the New Republic, criticizing Bill Gates for focusing too much on the financial piece and for-profit part of this response. Do you think that the world would have been better off if we'd collectively worked in a more open source fashion? In other words, is capitalism solving the problem here, or is capitalism slowing down our response to the problem, in your opinion?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think it's both. The different programs have had, issues. I mean, we've seen problems with AstraZeneca, which was really in combination with University of Oxford, and to have no profit motive, and to be the least expensive vaccine to handle 2.5 billion people on the planet or more. And it's had some issues, of course. And so, there isn't any easy answer here, but we're very lucky because we have a plethora of effective vaccines. They do prevent deaths and hospitalizations to a remarkable degree, all of them, against the variants too. So up until now, we have really been, it's a war. There's been many battles. Hopefully we're, nearing the end here. And, I think the mixture of the capitalism and the non-financial centric thinking has gotten us where we are.
And not that I want to dwell on it, but I segued out of the presidential comparison. Obviously, there were some really awful things in terms of the response in the Trump administration. I assume you would agree.
Right. We should never have been in the situation we're in, we have been in, David. That is, to go 2 months when there's obviously a global pandemic and have no testing available. Basically what happened, we seeded the entire country. And it's been, trying to dig out from that point in. So, that was a failure of CDC, of FDA. You can't pin that on the administration per se, except they were obviously the buck stops with them. and the president at the time. But then there was all the lying and the anti-science and the mask and the super spreading. I mean, just one thing after another. So that didn't help. But really what got us in deep, you know what, was the testing issue.
Right. Okay, thanks. I don't want to dwell on that too much. But one of the interesting things I know you believe is that there is too much concern about the variants right now in the United States. Explain yourself there.
Right. So, I coined this term scariant. And the reason is that there are thousands and thousands of variants. That is anything with, multiple mutations in the virus that has 30,000 letters would qualify as a variant. And so all these news headlines like the devil is already here and the double mutant and all these things, they're kind of scary, but they had no basis to scare because there was nothing there or nothing proven. So right now there's really just a handful of variants that are real, that they all should be considered innocent until proven guilty. And so, the public doesn't know. The variant is a new term, and it just a term when you don't know what it is kind of it's a connotation of fear. So we have to get much better at characterizing these, and I hope that people will now accept that all variants are not an issue. It's just a few that we have to really be on top of. And the other thing that you're pointing towards, David, is that the vaccines work against the variants. We have not seen any variant that has failed the vaccines. Perhaps one vaccine has been a problem in one variant, but overall, there's not been one that has been a problem for overriding with vaccines.
After I wrote the piece that I interviewed you for last week, which we published at Techonomy, somebody who I know got very angry at me because she said that the Brazilian variant is causing tremendous havoc in Massachusetts, and therefore she disagreed with you. Is the Brazilian variant too really responsive to the vaccines?
Right. So that variant is known as P1. And obviously, there's been a horrific situation in Brazil. It's not just due to the variant, though. There's a lot of other problems in Brazil. And the vaccines actually have had very good laboratory studies with P1. In fact, it's not as bad a variant for this property called immune evasion. That is, it can evade our immune response, as the South African variant 351. So no, I'm sorry, but that person who was upset about this, there's no reason to think that our vaccines, which includes even the Chinese vaccine Sinovac, has efficacy against this P1 variant, which is not just in Brazil, it's throughout South America. It's in British Columbia. It's in certain states in the US. It is a variant with some immune evasion and has more transmissibility, but it's not one that are going to stop our vaccines.
Okay. Somebody says you're whitewashing the previous administration. How do you, I don't get that feeling myself, but you're pretty deeply critical, aren't you, on balance?
Oh, absolutely. The prior administration did almost everything possible to hurt us. It's unfortunate. And they muzzled the CDC and subverted it. They tried to do that with the FDA. And if it wasn't for Stephen Hahn standing up and Peter Marks that had to tighten the criteria to get a vaccine approval, we might have seen a vaccine approved on the basis of 32 events. That's what could have happened. And might not even have been in the FDA. It might have been directly through HHS. So there were things that were being done, some of it behind the scenes, that were just egregious and unthinkable. And, we lost a lot of credibility around the world when our CDC and FDA and the administration were anti-science and politicizing all the efforts to try to counter a pandemic, which hasn't been easy anywhere in the world. But we made it much more difficult than it had to be.
I know this is a highly subjective question, but I've heard a lot of people say numbers. How many deaths do you think might have been avoided if we had responded better as a nation from the beginning?
Well, Deborah Birx, who was intimately involved, she said on 60 Minutes that after the first surge, where there was, somewhere 50, 60,000 deaths, that almost all or most of the rest, that is another 500,000, should have been avoided. I agree. Hundreds of thousands of people unnecessarily died. Millions with long COVID have been affected. Many still disabled or unable to work. A lot of the real toll of this pandemic could have been markedly reduced had we taken a much more aggressive approach, starting, of course, with the testing.
Here's a good question. Booster vaccines, do you expect they're going to be necessary, and how soon?
Well, it depends. If you listen to the CEO of Pfizer, he says they're going to be necessary. Tony Fauci, I think, agrees. I'm not so sure about that. Right now, we have seen the Pfizer and Moderna trials at over 6 months see very strong immune response maintained. So unless we see, for example, in the aged, where the immune response starts to fade, or we get a new variant. We've seen with SARS-CoV-1, which was in 2003, which is the most closely related virus, people still have antibodies and T cell responses 17 years later. So I'm hoping, who wants to have a booster? I'm hoping that we don't have to go through that, but it remains to be seen right now.
Okay, I want to try to get to AI in medicine and individualized medicine, but now we're getting a whole bunch of great questions from the audience. I'm going to ask one. Dr. John Madison, who's somebody who would spend a lot, you may know John, he used to be at Kaiser Permanente. I'm just going to read it. I haven't even read the whole thing, but because I know he's a smart medical guy. There are reports that Manaus, Brazil had an estimated 70% herd immunity from the first wave. But when the variant entered a second wave in the same population, reports are that the clinical impact was as bad or worse than the first wave. How can we square those reports with other reports that none of the currently known variants represent a serious problem? Are these reports in error? What do you think of that?
Well, it depends on what you call a serious problem. I'm talking about the vaccine response. There isn't any question that the P1 Brazil variant leads to more reinfection because of that immune escape. And also, if you don't have all the mitigation, which hasn't been the case in Brazil, in effect, you're going to emphasize the spread. You're going to amplify it. So it isn't like these variants are going to be easy to. But my particular point was we have vaccines that protect against them, and that's why the race of getting vaccination around the world at the highest possible level and the highest risk people, and then everybody, is essential.
Well, your point about people who already had COVID only needing one vaccine notwithstanding, one thing I learned in our prep call that I didn't know, and I have a feeling most people don't realize, and I hope you'll explain this, is that the immune response from the vaccines in general is considerably greater than from having gotten COVID itself.
Right. My colleague at Scripps Research, Dennis Burton, and I wrote a paper in Nature Medicine about superhuman vaccines, which this is. There's only one other example of a superhuman vaccine to a virus, which is the HPV vaccine.
Really?
So, this is extraordinary. We're so lucky here that the spike protein proved to be such an easy target. Now, why is that important? You're getting at it, which is if you've had COVID, that's like the priming dose of the 2-dose vaccine. And the second dose for the people with prior COVID takes you to a place that is, pretty formidable. And if you get the 2 doses, they're much higher antibody response, immune response than we can get through a natural infection in almost everyone. So that's what we call superhuman, is that we got a vaccine that works better than natural infections.
Okay, that's really interesting. And we don't have tons more time, but I know one of the things you've been speaking out about and have worked a lot on and part of some global discussions about is the idea of a pan-coronavirus vaccine, and that might work on all coronaviruses, even going to the common cold, partly because they all have this spike structure on their exterior. Could you explain that and what the project is and what you think is going to be possible?
Yeah, this is really exciting, and it builds on the last point, and that is the spike protein, that this virus is so eminently suitable. Unlike influenza or HIV, it doesn't have nearly the hypermutation property. So the beta coronaviruses, which are a subset of the family of all coronaviruses, there are now efforts to develop a pan-coronavirus vaccine based on the fact that some people develop extraordinary potent multivalent antibodies on their own, and because we have tools like synthetic structural biology, AI, to get us to beat out this virus family. So CEPI, which is a global organization, is putting out big funding support, and many labs, academic labs, as well as life science industry are going to go after this. I'm hoping within a year, we have pan-coronavirus vaccines, which this is really important because instead of doing this variant by variant thing, we would be able to just knock them out. We don't care about the common cold part of the coronavirus family. We care about the ones that could.
Well, the common cold would not be included, but that doesn't matter here.
It's a bonus, but
relatively speaking.
Yeah.
But wait, so when you say we'll have it in a year, you mean we'll have the design of one, which we will then start testing?
Right, exactly. We could test that it's safe, that you get this broad immune response, neutralizing antibody immune response, and now we have it ready, whether it's for this pandemic that lingers on or another coronavirus pandemic. So we never have to experience this again.
So we wouldn't vaccinate the world with it. We'd wait until we needed it, but then we'd have it already designed and just start manufacturing it on an emergency basis and then get it out. Because you presume we will have more coronavirus pandemics, no question. Is that correct?
We're going to have more pandemics. It may not just be coronavirus, but this, fortunately, is a family of viruses that is so ideally suited. And if we can do that for this family, then we should be good to do it for others.
Okay, let's end on the translational piece. Talk about, and particularly ways in which maybe the global and national pandemic experience has altered the trajectory of this, but how is AI making healthcare human again? And where's AI taking medicine? And how does that tie into individualized medicine and the work you do more broadly?
Right. Well, basically the AI comes into play because we have so much data for each human being now, multi-dimensional data. And so no physician, no clinician could deal with all that data. So, the whole idea is to be able to process it in a meaningful way, to extract it accurately, what's going on. And the inputs can lead to better treatments. We've seen that AI has helped in drug discovery during the pandemic and elsewhere. And we're also going to see, the whole idea that the gift of time, which is my overarching goal, that we can lean on machines, both for doctors as well for patients to get more autonomy. And ultimately, dealing with all that data will not be burdensome. We'll have more accurate diagnoses, and we'll restore the patient-doctor relationship. And that's really what we can do if we do this right.
So to summarize, we have more data than we can manage otherwise about everybody individually and collectively. AI will help us process and understand that. And the net result will be much more individualized treatment that will be more effective for everyone in the world that you envision.
That's really the hope. I think it's achievable, especially the more humane part of medicine, because that gift of time that machines can get us here is something that we've got to get back, because we've lost that. We've had a lot of erosion of the precious patient-doctor relationship.
Well, Dr. Topol, Eric, thank you so much. You're great. I mean, you're so deeply informed. It's wonderful to have you here. We don't have more time now, but I hope to talk to you again, possibly even in a face-to-face situation. Oh, I wanted to ask you one thing. Were Josh and I making a mistake before when we sat on the sofa together, given that we're both fully vaccinated? We haven't seen each other in many months.
Not at all. We got to loosen things up. Otherwise, we're not going to have the incentive for people to be vaccinated.
Thank God. I was like trying not to breathe on him, but okay.
No. You're vaccinated. You're good to go with each other. Vaccinees unite.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Great to be with you.
Appreciate it, Eric.